As many have already guessed, there is something wrong with our history. This is evidenced by the identical architecture of cities around the world, as if all cities were designed in one architectural center. The youth of all European languages, as if all European languages began to be created in the 19th century. It was at this time that spelling dictionaries and spelling rules for all European peoples were actively created. This process ended only in the 20th century. There is a complete feeling that the ancient world was not divided into separate countries. It was one country with a single architecture, laws, and language. And it was only in the middle of the 19th century that this unified empire was shattered into fragments. And for each artificially created nation, they created their own language and customs. Learning history is like a quest. Many have already paid attention to the similarity of cities. There are also many works on the history of the creation of national languages. But after all, a single empire is not only one language, one architecture, and one customs. A single empire should have the same anthem. Take the four largest empires of the 19th century. The UK, Germany, Russia, and the United States. And let's see how different the hymns were in these countries in the 19th century. We will not compare the sound of modern hymns. We will listen to hymns created and used in the 19th century. Let's start with Russia. Many people think that the anthem of Russia in the 19th century was the anthem God Save the Tsar. This is almost true, but God, We Keep the King began to sound only after 1833 year. At the end of 1816th year, Alexander I issued a decree that established the order of performance of the anthem. His music was the singing of the British anthem words and music by Henry Carey. They called this hymn the Prayer of the Russians. It was to be performed at the meetings of the emperor. It turns out that in the independent Russian Empire, until 1833, the anthem of the British Empire was used. Here, listen to how it sounds. Glory is long on earth. Now let's move on to the UK. The anthem God Save the Queen is used for important state and public events. It has been known since the reign of King George II. A wonderful hymn, very fascinating music. You just feel the power of the country in which it sounds. It turns out that the two largest empires used the same anthem for solemn events. But not only Russia and Great Britain used this anthem. Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Liechtenstein also used the British anthem. There doesn't seem to be anything strange about this. Canada, Australia, and New Zealand are former English colonies and could well have used one anthem for all. But for some reason, Germany, during its heyday and unification, also used the English anthem. In 1871, Bismarck united the German lands and practically created modern Germany. But for some reason, the country that gave Bach and Wagner to the world could not create its own unique anthem. The largest state in Europe from 1871st year to 1918th year used the English anthem. That's how it sounds in German. Germany did not have friendly relations with England, but at the same time, these countries had a single anthem. The greatest composers of the world lived in Germany, but the country used an almost enemy English anthem. It turns out that the three major powers of the 19th century used the same anthem. Of course, this can theoretically be explained by the fact that all the royal courts of Europe had family ties, and therefore could use one anthem. But the United States of America does not fit into this coherent theory in any way. After all, everyone has heard about the War of Independence of 1775 year, when 13 British colonies located on the territory of North America declared their independence from Great Britain. The separation of the colonies did not go bloodlessly. The fighting between the future Americans and the British lasted for almost 8 years. So at the beginning of the 19th century, the territories of the United States of America, to put it mildly, disliked the British. Also, the joint friendship was prevented by the events of 1861 year, when during the Civil War between the North and the South, the British fleet sank and plundered merchant ships of the northern states. Everything points to the fact that the Americans should have simply hated the British. It seems to have been so. But when you start to find out which anthem was used in the territories of the northern states, you come to a perplexity. Until 1931 year, two anthems were mainly played in the territories of the supposedly independent United States of America. The first is the patriotic song Long Live Columbia, and another, more interesting anthem, or as it is modestly called, the May Country Song, that is, My Country. So, independent and freedom-loving Americans were happy to use the song My Country instead of the anthem, which is practically a copy of the English anthem. Listen to this patriotic song. People who have been fighting for their independence from Great Britain for 8 years are happily singing the imperial anthem. Even at Obama's inauguration, they used a cover of this anthem. Link in the description. The situation is paradoxical. Supposedly irreconcilable enemies used the same anthem. Americans hated the British and solemnly stretched out at the sound of the English anthem. The same thing happened in the supposedly independent New Germany, which was created by Bismarck, and which almost never had friendly feelings for the British. We are told that there was an irreconcilable rivalry between the major powers. And it's not just economic disputes, there were real wars. But all supposedly irreconcilable enemies used the same hymn in the 19th century. This all leads to logically simple conclusions. All the supposedly independent empires of the 19th century, England, Germany, Russia, and the United States, had one common leadership, and it seems that nothing has changed in the 20th century. We are shown brightly painted maps of the world of supposedly independent presidents, but all these presidents are governed from one center. Listen to the anthems of supposedly independent countries again. I'll put them in order. Russia. Germany. England. USA. That's it. Watch my channel.